There is a really, really troubling disconnect that some legislative Democrats have when it comes to the real life impacts for working class people of the climate agenda that Governor Jay Inslee is trying really hard to protect. Let's get to it in our segment, Unbelievable. All right, you all know by now how I feel about Governor Inslee's Climate Commitment Act. I think it is similar to the homelessness industrial complex. I think it's the climate industrial complex. He has promised a lot of things in the last 12 years while he's been governor. He's delivered on very, very few of them. In fact, some of his climate goals are actually going backward. And we know that, they are hiding information on those goals. They're scrubbing websites. He's lied about the impact the carbon tax would have on gas prices. He's lied about it repeatedly. A WSDOT whistleblower says he was asked to lie about it. So it's all just a big scam, in my opinion. I care about the climate. I want to see things done to actually help the environment, to help the climate, things that are trackable, things we can measure, and that aren't a waste of money, because right now we're just sending billions of dollars down the drain. But anyway, we know that the government in Washington state is making money hand over fist from these carbon auctions. More money than they ever expected, more money than they even know what to do with. And they're making that money off your back at the pump. They're making that money off on the backs of working class people who have been suffering now under increased gas prices in Washington state for years, really, because we have some of the highest gas taxes in the country. But then you add on top of it, 50 cents per gallon that these carbon auctions are resulting in, an increase at the pump. We had, for the first time ever over the summer, the highest gas prices in the entire nation. It had never happened in our history. So some Republicans in Olympia are trying to figure out, okay, so you've got the initiative going on in the background that would repeal these aspects of the Climate Commitment Act. So that's cooking, right? And it's very possible that when it gets voted on in November, the Climate Commitment Act and these carbon auctions just go away, so that this won't be necessary. But in the meantime, you have all this money coming in. Like I said, more than lawmakers ever wanted, needed, expected. So what do you do with it? Well, of course, Democrats are like, oh, goody, goody, all my pet projects. What can I fund with this? But there are some Republican lawmakers who are like, no, we need to give this back to people. You didn't ever expect it for this. You didn't budget for this much money. So let's give it back to people. We can look at, registered vehicle owners. Obviously, we know who uses gas and who uses a vehicle and who has up-to-date registration. We can send this money back. So the proposal is House Bill 2040 from Representative Connors, Dye, and Couture, all Republicans. They described the bill thusly. Registered vehicle owners in Washington would receive a $180 rebate check, or up to $360 per two-car family, next July under a proposal by Representative April Connors and Representative Mary Dye. House Bill 2040, also known as the carbon auction rebate, will use the $1.3 billion in excess revenue. Yes, $1.3 billion in excess revenue collected under the state's new carbon allowance auctions to distribute an equal one-time payment to all 6.8 million registered vehicle owners in Washington. And then they note that out of respect for the initiative process, that bill would expire on October 31st prior to the next general election, because obviously if it goes away, you're not going to need these rebates anymore. So look, do I think that this is going to pass? No. Do I think Democrats are going to give up a dime of that $1.3 billion in money that they got from people who are suffering financially? No, they're going to find different ways and things to spend it on in pet projects, what have you. Now, that doesn't surprise me. But I will say it never ceases to amaze me, the true disconnect that some elected leaders, some quote-unquote public servants, have with the lives of everyday people. And I get it, that a lot of these progressive Democrats represent Seattle. And yeah, if you're representing a legislative district that includes a lot of a major city, you have different ideas, you have different solutions, your constituents have different wants and needs, and you're elected to look out for those. But you're also a state lawmaker. And if you're pushing policies and pushing an agenda that's only designed to help your specific set of constituents, the rest of the state be damned, is that really being a public servant? I don't think it is. I think being a public servant is doing the most good for the most amount of people, and recognizing that sometimes your policy preferences have negative impacts on a lot of people. So Senator Jamie Pedersen, who I found to be a reasonable guy in the past. He was asked by Como News about this because Senator Jamie Pedersen, and this is from Como, was a sponsor of the cap and trade program through the Climate Commitment Act. So this has been his baby as much as it has been Governor Inslee's baby. It says he argued the proposed rebate is directly contrary to the objective of the program designed to get people to use less gas and pay for projects that are meant to slow or adapt to climate change. He said, quote, I think it's pretty unlikely that we're going to divide up all the money that we get from the Climate Commitment Act, all the excess revenue, and give it back to people based on how much gas was consumed in the state. We want people to take transit. We want people to use electric vehicles or walk or bike. Think about that for a second. So there's a proposal to give people who've, been paying way too much at the pumps, just a little bit of their money back. We're not talking about a lot here. We're talking about a little. And Senator Jamie Pedersen's argument against that is, well, we want people to be commuting on their bikes. We want people to be walking. We want people to be using electric vehicles. So if we give them this money back and they just put it, they spend it on gas to put back in their cars, then that's just the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. That sounds like someone who has never, ever left Seattle. That sounds like someone who has never, ever been outside a city limit. I've said it before, man, if public transit was convenient, I would take it in a heartbeat. Who wants to sit in traffic if there's a viable public transit option? Who wants to waste that much money on gas if there's a viable alternative? But for, I would say, 90% of the people in Washington state by geography, that there is no viable alternative for them. They have to drive to work. Electric vehicles even aren't a viable option for them. You want to tell someone in the Tri-Cities, you want to tell someone, gosh, in Republic, Washington, that they should bike to work, that they should walk everywhere they go. Like, that's great if you live on Capitol Hill. It's not so great if you live in a rural area. And that's what I mean by the disconnect, is you're punishing people for an activity that they have no choice but to participate in. You're punishing people for utilizing the only way they can to get to and from work to make a living for themselves and their family. And you are so opposed when you have $1.3 billion in excess revenue. You're so dead set on punishing those people for something that they have no choice or say in, that you're not willing to give them $180. That's pretty ridiculous. That's not public service. That's greed. That's greed, and that is a level of disconnect that is really hard for me to wrap my mind around, and it is frankly unbelievable.